Hello, everyone, and welcome to How to Chess. We are honored to be joined by the 2016 Dutch national champion, the 2001 Tata Steel Masters champion, the Dutch #2, top 50 player in the world, Team Magnus member, also worked extensively with friend of Chessable, Anish Giri. And speaking of Chessable, his latest course is called Lifetime Repertoires, the Tarrasch Defense. And of course, we are here to discuss chess role models. And Jorden, you had a not surprising but inspiring choice when I asked you off the record what came to mind for chess role models. What did come to mind, Jorden?
Yeah, no, nothing out of the ordinary there. But for me, I would have to go with Garry Kasparov, simply because I kind of grew up studying his books when I was like 10, 11, 12 years old. I think that's when I read most of my books, actually. So I would have his books on my bed night. What do you call it? Like
Bedside table, yeah.
bedside table, yeah. And just before going to sleep, I would read these books for just maybe quite long, like 1 2 hours. And I really did that every night. And then upon waking up, I would also read them maybe for an hour. So, um, and actually, I'm not referring specifically to Kasparov's. He has many great books, but I'm not referring to his books on his great predecessors, which is devoted to all the world champions that became before him, with some notable exceptions such as Korchnoi and I think maybe one more player, but kind of forgot about that one. But in general, I've always been studying his books on his matches with Karpov, so his world championship matches. And I also really liked his book series that came out actually not that long ago, if you think about it. At least when I was 12, they just came out or something. So maybe like 10, 15 years or something ago, they came out. But they're books on his own career. So he has like one book from 1978 to 1985, 1985 to maybe 19 something, and then 19 something to the end of his career when he retired, basically. And in these games, he annotates all of his memorable games, basically. And to me, always, his energetic and dynamic playing style really attracted me. And even when I was a bit older, I would, like, when I was already strong grandmaster, I would pick up these books and go over them again. So by this point, I've really, read those books back and forth. Although I haven't
Yeah.
touched them now in a few years.
Okay, yeah, and I think those books, the latter that you referred to, are called Kasparov on Kasparov, at least in English. And so you mentioned, of course, his dynamic style. Is there anything else you sort of took away from reviewing this legend's writings?
Well, I was always interested in the openings he would play, for example. But to be honest, what impressed me the most was like the sheer number of lines that would be in the books. Like, I would try. I think it was really useful for me because I would read them like without, like I said, without a chessboard, just blindfolded in my bed, or using diagrams. And there are a lot of diagrams in the book, but some of the analysis are just so long and go on. Like, I think there's at some point you just have like analysis that goes for like a couple of pages, and I would kind of try to follow along. Sometimes not manage, sometimes do manage, but um, for me, like the depth that would go into writing, all these analysis was really something special. So I really like that. I wouldn't, of course, read all of it. I wouldn't read it from front to back, or whatever. I would just open it at a random page, start reading, and I would do that as many times until I couldn't find a new page anymore. In fact, I don't think I've ever finished reading a chess book from front to back. I would always just open it randomly because, okay, there's usually not really a story anyway. It's just I would just look at the chess positions. Um, but yeah, no, I would say that some of the openings he played always attracted me. I think when he was really young, he would also play the King's Indian defense quite a bit, so I got interested in checking out that. With White, he would play the Fischer Sozin six bishop c4 move against the knight, or for example against Nigel Short in their world championship match. So I was interested in checking some of that, and I definitely learned a thing or two from reading all of that stuff.
Okay, well, I think there's something instructive, especially Jordan, in what you said about playing through the moves in your head, because I think a lot of people, when we read chess books, there's first of all kind of like a swirling debate about how important it is to play through the variations. But just the fact that you sort of, it sounds like, use that as a training method to, at times at least, when you were up for it, to play through the moves in your head. Do you feel like that helped you develop your visualization skills?
Yeah, I guess so. For me, it was mainly laziness. I wouldn't be bothered to grab the board and pieces and start going. It's just much more convenient to read the book just by opening it, and it definitely must have helped my visualization skills. I guess to an extent, I would at times actually grab the board, but then I would notice that like I would have the big book beside it. Actually, they're big books, and I would like execute the moves on the board, but I found myself just staring at the book. So like I wouldn't really look at the board anyway. So I just looked at the book, and like the moves are being executed on the board, but I wasn't actually looking at the board. So that's a bit weird. So it's just like moving and looking the other way. But I guess yeah, just reading books blindfolded helps. For me, also one of the book series I read very much, maybe even more than the Kasparov books, was the Devaretsky series. I think Devaretsky wasn't necessarily a an idol or someone like a chess player I looked up to, but his writing was really superb. So I read all of his books as well many times.
Do you remember any specific takeaways from the Devaretsky books?
I must have learned a thing or two from his endgame manuals.
So you really did read it, because a lot of people say they have it, but they haven't read it.
I definitely went over it a bunch of times. Like I remember I had it and I went over it, and I've also gone over it during a specific training camp. I once had a training camp with Carsten Mueller, maybe 20. That was a bit older already. Maybe it was 2017, 2016, or whatever. And we had like 1 week of training, and we went through the entire manual.
Wow.
So we did it really fast, but we skipped, of course, the basic. But we went basically through everything, and I also went over it a few times before myself. But most of these things you forget, and you have to kind of look at them again. But it helps to have a bit of a basis. But to be honest, the endgame manual didn't interest me as much. It has a really old series. I think it's like secrets of dot 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 chess, for example, secrets of attacking chess, secrets of strategical chess, secrets, something like that. I really kind of forgot the exact name, but
Yeah,
like
I'm
I said,
familiar with the series.
sorry.
Sorry, I was just saying I'm familiar with the series. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I read those books like 10 years ago, so it's been a while, but I would read those many times over. And he has a lot of useful advice in these books, and he always goes over, or always he often goes over his students' games, most notably Artur Yusupov and Sergei Dolmatov, who were two of his best students, and he analyzed their games and kind of gives advice. For example, I remember one of the things he writes in one of these books is that some trainers say that you should play your opening preparation slowly to make sure that you remember the right move. Maybe kind of coax your opponent into thinking that they're not going to be under any threat, but actually he recommends the exact opposite. He says, play your opening moves fast. If you know them, put pressure on the opponent and gain time on the clock. So I think I definitely followed that advice. There's just one particular one I remember. Another famous thing he wrote is long variation, bad variation. So if you're having a long analysis, it's going to be bad, without the engine, of course. But yeah, no, his books were really, really great from just a learning perspective, with great exercises as well.
That's great advice. And did you find it challenging to take the advice to play quickly in the opening, or you said it came kind of naturally to you to approach chess that way?
Yeah, no, to me that came really, really very natural.
I'm jealous.
I've always been. I don't know. It helps to kind of restrain yourself at times. I was always told to sit on my hands before making moves, but I never really could. I would just want to play my moves immediately. And even when I was out of preparation, I would often play too fast. I think by this point I've become really normal player when it comes to time usage. I'm not super fast, like for example, like Nepomniachtchi, but I'm also not super slow like some others. So I'm kind of maybe a little bit faster than usual, nothing extraordinary. I've kind of learned to take my time at times.
Okay. And bringing it back to Kasparov, Jordan, I know you played him in Blitz in 2021. That was in real life, correct?
Yeah, yeah, no, it's. I think I hold the nice. What do you call it? I have the nice. I'm the last guy who lost to him in an officially rated FIDE game, so that's really nice.
Congratulations.
Wow.
um, And was that your first time meeting him?
Me, yeah, I think so. Yeah, yeah. I've seen him. I'd seen him a couple of times before, but of course, I think I spoke like 5 words to him. He came up with a yeah, yeah. I remember we were. It was after the closing ceremony in Zagreb. I'm not even sure he realized I was one of the players, but anyway, we talked a little bit, and he said like, "Well, I'm feeling so old," and he came out up with an anecdote about a Russian championship when he was still the youngest. So I don't exactly remember the exact anecdote, but he was kind of going back to when he was one of the youngest players in one of the Soviet championships, I should say.
I'm sure he knew who you were. now, now, let me ask: did you get a chance to tell him at all that his books? I mean, I'm sure he gets this like everywhere he goes all the time, but to tell him that his books made quite an imprint on you?
No, and I didn't. And during the tournament itself, he wasn't playing his best chess, so I didn't get to talk to him after, unfortunately. But maybe sometime I will. But I think every good chess player has read his books at least at some point down the road.
Yeah, my great predecessors in particular, being that I ask people what their favorite chess books are practically every week, I feel like every good chess player has read that. But Kasparov and Kasparov, I mean, obviously they sound fantastic, but like I have to admit, I haven't read them, and I feel like they don't get mentioned as much. So it's good that you highlighted them.
Yeah, that's actually a little bit weird because okay, Kasparov is one of the greatest player of all time, if not the greatest. Maybe now you can argue that it's Magnus, but um, I was always interested in Kasparov as a player more than other players. And then there's basically your natural choice, of course, to read the books which are written by him. So I already have the books on his matches with Karpov, but a lot of those games were quite dull, actually. We all know those few amazing games they played, but um, a few, for example, I actually one of them is annotated in my Tarrasch course, the one which Karpov won, the famous knight g2 move, I believe. Yeah, knight after gh4, knight
Oh, with
g2.
the end game, the pawn
Yeah,
sack?
yeah,
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 that is
exactly.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's some other really famous ones. For example, at some point, Kasparov had to win a game to come to equalize the match and thereby retain the title. But a lot of those World Championships games were quite dull. For example, the first match when Karpov was up 5-0 and just needed one more win to secure the sixth win. They made like 20 draws in a row, and all of them were short, maybe with one or two exceptions. But his his games and tournaments to me were much more interesting, and he annotates them as well in his Kasparov on Kasparov book. So I just read them, yeah, being really interested in those games.
Excellent. And so you didn't get to tell him about your admiration, but you did flag a couple of his Tarrasch games, which you were able to write about in your Chessable course. What else did you learn from his handling of the Tarrasch in particular, Jordan?
What I learned, that's a good question actually. um, I wouldn't know what exactly I learned right away. He definitely played some of his games really well. I think I annotated one of his games. Forgetting the name now. It was a really good player. He beat Korchnoi, but I don't think I annotated that one.
Was it
Ah, yes, it was
Larson?
the Danish player.
Larson, yeah.
Larsen, yeah, like he beat Larsen. Yes, sorry. Hopefully not
Yeah.
upsetting anyone by not remember Larsen, but
That's all right.
beat
We can
Larsen,
edit it. No one will know.
yeah, in a really nice game. But I don't know exactly if I learned anything from his specific handling of the Tarrasch. Um, like I said, I learned maybe a lot as well by analyzing the new lines with the computer. But maybe it's really interesting to some players is that the old main line they used to play by taking on d4 is now really no longer as much advocated by the engine. The engine wants to close the structure by playing c4 instead, which really leads to wildly different types of positions. Actually, there was a really recent game, a Keimer against Abdusattorov in Vaikense, played in this exact line. I think Abdusattorov got a very fine position out of the opening, proceeded to get outplayed, however, and nearly lost that game, but finally he drew. But those positions are super interesting and hard to handle for both players. But yeah, not sure what exactly I learned from. I mean, I guess I learned more of him as just by studying all of his games in general and the energy he plays. I loved his handling of King's Indian positions, for example, where he would sacrifice all those pawns and um, just crush his opponents. Like that's not possible anymore nowadays.
Yeah. And one last question, Jordan. I can't resist because having studied Kasparov so extensively and, of course, having worked with Magnus, I got to see if you'll venture a take on who is the greatest of all time. I find these debates to be it's hard to compare people across eras, but do you have an opinion?
Yeah, I completely agree. It's really hard to compare people across eras simply because the amount of information they had accessible is different. But um, I guess by this point you could make a really strong case for Magnus simply because the competition is so fierce. He's been dominating for what, 12 years or something. I think his level is higher than, and that's normal, but than anyone else had before. But yeah, even though that's normal, I think because he had more information, I guess the way he dominated or dominates his competitors even at the moment is it's really special. But yeah, it's super hard to say. Maybe it also feels more special because it's happening right now at the moment, and it's still happening.
Yeah. Um, I go back and forth on it myself. And Jordan, on your Chessable page, they sort of make it sound like you might have another course in the pipeline. Is that something you can discuss?
I probably have to make another course at some point, but I have no subject currently thought of, so I cannot really reveal too much because there's nothing to be revealed at the moment. But I sure want to make more courses, and not only is it for me an interesting learning opportunity, but it's nice to make these courses and to see people enjoy them and play them later on themselves as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And obviously, I personally, as a fan of your chess, wouldn't want it to be your number one priority. You gotta get out there and crush some people.
Exactly, yeah. But there's always time to be found to writing on chess.
Yeah, and as you say, it helps your game too, exposes you to new ideas and so on. So,
Yeah,
Jordan, this has been awesome, amazing to hear you discuss your affinity for one of the true legends of the game. Anything to add before we say goodbye here on How to Chess?
no, it's just been great talking to you. I guess, and yeah, no, I think that's it.
Excellent. Okay, well, listeners, obviously, we'll link to Jordan's Chessable course, and you can follow him on Twitter or Instagram as well, which we will link to. Jordan, thanks again for joining us. Much appreciated.
Thank you, man. Thanks.